Okay. All right, we're up and running on YouTube now. So, there we go. All right, sorry about that little technical glitch, guys. Really sorry about that. So let's go back to so hope all that made sense. Um, that's how I make the tiles. Okay, and the one thing I didn't include in there is how I put the magnets in. So I do have one tile here that's unpainted, but I did go ahead and cut holes in it for the magnets. And I'm going to show you how I put those in. I'm going to switch over to my craft table view here. Okay. Move that mouse pad out of the way, that trackpad. So there's no magnets. Okay. I was like, I thought I brought my magnets in here. So I use these little I'll have to go. I gotta go find these on Amazon. So these little magnets right here. Let me do this. I'm gonna go find these on Amazon real quick for you guys. And I'm gonna do that with a couple of things here. So I've got these magnets, and I have the hot knife that I use to cut the holes. You can do this. There's a couple of different ways you can do this. I used to actually just take a drill bit that had a pointy end, and I would just kind of twist it in there, and it would do the job. But it was hard to get it a nice clean cut with that. There are many ways you can do this. You can use a soldering iron. I wouldn't recommend it because it's way too hot, and it will very easily get out of control, and the hole will wind up being too big. So I wouldn't do that if I were you. I would go with this hot knife that I'm about to put in the chat here. Well, this is, I can't get. There we go. So there's the hot knife that I'm putting it in the chat right now. So that's the hot knife, and then let me pull up the magnets for you real quick, mostly because I can't remember what size they are. But these are, what do you call them? Neodymium, however you say that, magnets. And they're 6x2 millimeter magnets. Okay. My browser, it's not letting me get the link. Okay, there we go. All right. And here are the magnets. All right. So there are the magnets, and yeah, that's all we need. So I used that little hot knife. It takes a little practice to get the holes for the magnets just right, just the right size. And they don't have to be exactly right because it is foam. I mean, it's very firm foam, but it's still kind of soft, right? But there you go. So let me, I'll come back to those in just a second because I actually realized that first we need to do some other things. So there are a couple things that I do. So typically when I make a set of tiles, it's 16 tiles. Okay. I'm only going to do 8 this evening, but, and actually you're probably only going to see me complete 7 because this one I want to show you how I base them and everything. And it won't dry in time for me to completely finish it. But this guy, you know, you'll notice there's texture and all that kind of thing. There are some things I didn't do to it, but so this is why. Half of them I put texture on, and I don't create damage to the tiles necessarily. And neither of the samples I have here have damage to them, but basically like chips and cracks and things like that. Like I'll put those, that kind of distress on these tiles. And I do that to about half of them. I'll chip and all that kind of stuff, and then I'll do cracks on half of those so that you have some variety in your set. So I really love this little hobby knife. It is not obviously an X-Acto knife, and I will tell you that I do this sometimes with an X-Acto knife. I don't think it works that well. I think this one just works better for me. So, I mean, and essentially, I'm just going to go, and this doesn't have to be exact. Like you can see, I'm tearing this up right now. I'm not even really cutting it. But that's creating some cool distress on it. But then you can also, if you catch it, you got to catch it at just the right angle. And you can sort of shave off just a little bit. You can do a V cut like this. And create some cool chips in the stone. And I do this before, I do all of this before I texture it. And usually I do it before I put the holes in for the magnets. But that was another thing I didn't want you guys to have to wait on me to do. So, and it doesn't take that long, but I was trying to minimize the number of steps you actually have to watch me go through. But it's very simple. When you put those holes in there, you don't want them to be too deep. Just a little deeper than the thickness of the magnet. And then we'll glue the magnets in with hot glue. So, and this, like, you can really just be really random with this, because the idea is that you want it to look, organic, like it was damaged. I think that looks pretty good. And so this one, I think, let me get that off of there. Yeah, okay. I think I'm going to put a crack in this, and I think I'm going to put it in the center stone. I would show you, I actually put a crack in one of the other ones that's ready to paint, but I don't know if you'll be able to see it because it's black right now. So, and again, all this stuff is just random, man. Just have fun with it. Because any of this stuff is going to be, stuff that occurs naturally. And so it's going to be very random in nature. So, and once I do this, I kind of go in, take the knife and kind of press down the edges of the crack a little bit so that it's a little more pronounced once I paint it, because you want, one of the things that can happen is that the base would fill it up, and then it won't be as prominent. So you can see I just cut bits of it and kind of pushed it out with the edge of the knife. And so now this is the trick. I've got a couple of balls of foil. This is old school trick, man. Just a couple balls of foil, and I have a couple because I want the textures to be a little bit different, and you really just roll this thing around on there, and you can see, and you could do all kinds of stuff to it, like I take one of these ends that's a little more sticking out a little more, and I kind of push it down in there, which you can see it creates more of an indentation around those cracks. I try to do this in my hand and not holding it, because I'm pretty rough with this thing, and it'll make the whole desk shake, which will make the camera shake. So, and yeah, I'm gonna have to do it this way, so the camera might shake a little bit. So you want to try to kind of get all over it, and like, it's cool if it scratches on it. You can see it kind of scratched there, and you see that's what that winds up looking like when you paint it, which I think looks kind of cool. So any of this stuff works, right? And you want to make sure you get the edges, the sides of the tiles, and you want to get those edges that you just cut off and made distressed, right? So that they don't look like perfectly clean cuts. Because you want to, I don't know, I want to give the impression that this stuff's old, and that just makes it cooler. And then you want to, get the sides, and you don't have to get the sides if you don't want to. But I will tell you this, you do have to paint the sides, because if you don't, it's going to be too easy to see them. Now, I will say, typically I paint the bottoms, not with the color, but just with the base, because the base, the way it's made, it protects. It creates a hard shell on the outside of the tile. So, and it looks better. And I've been known to sell these from time to time. So typically I will base the bottoms. I did not for the ones we're going to paint tonight, but there you go. And that's it. That's how you texture it. Right now it just looks like a beat up piece of foam, but in a moment it's going to look like this. All right. So I've got my glue gun here, and it is plugged in and heated up. And I will say this is a great glue gun, the Sure Bonder. Like, it's the best, man. I've had a bunch of crappy cheap ones and they're just terrible. And this is a dual temperature one, so do low and high. You definitely want to do low. Sometimes I think maybe I should use a cheaper one for these magnets, because I don't know if you know this, but heat can cause a magnet to lose its magnetism. And so some of my more recent batches of dungeon tiles, the magnets have not been as strong as on some of my older ones, because I was using and I think it's because I was using a cheaper glue gun, and it was probably a little bit lower temperature, so it wasn't apparently this is causing the magnets to lose a bit of their magnetism. They're still magnetic, but not as strong as they were. So the trick with this is, because of the way I do this, which, a lot of people do this a lot of different ways. There are, you can put a magnet in one side and like a screw in the other side. I didn't do that because I was selling them. I didn't want it to look like there was a screw in them. So, but you can do that, and then you don't have to worry about which way the magnets are turned, because they're always going to be attracted to, if you got magnets in two sides and screws in the opposite, in the alternating sides, then, you'll always be able to get the magnets to connect to something. But in this case, I'm using 4 magnets, and so their polarity has to be opposite. And it's super easy. You just have to make sure that alternating ones are flipped. So you got one that's on the north here, one that's got south facing out, north and south. And the one that it's easy. I mean, because I'll do tons of them at a time. I just take my little stack of magnets here, pull this one off, set it down exactly the way that I pulled it off the stack, and then the next one I just flip over, and then that one's face up and then flipped over. And so I always know those are going to be facing the right way. I just pick them up in order and put them in the tile. I always know they're going to be facing the right way. Of course, when you make a lot of these, you do sometimes have to go back and test them and make sure the magnets are situated correctly. All right. Okay, so I put a little too much glue in that one, but that's okay. So what's going to happen is some of it's going to come out and get stuck to my finger. And it's hot. That's hot. That's hot. I don't know if you ever burned yourself with hot glue, but that's why it's a good thing to use the low temperature. Okay. And you just had to clean it up a little bit, because you don't want too much of that little, bits of hot glue hanging off of there. So let's see if I can just do a little bit less this time. So you just want to put the nozzle right on the edge of the hole. You just kind of squeeze it until you can see it about halfway up the hole. And then make sure you pick up that magnet and it's facing in the same direction it was when you picked it up. And you just push it down in there. And you just want to turn your tile and put the next one in. And so that way you can always be sure that they're in correctly. Because the problem is, if they're not, it's not just, that they won't, that the magnets won't be attracted, but they'll actually repel each other. So, all right, last one. Now, and, I haven't ever figured out the trick of not having hot glue string everywhere. Like it's supposed to be, scrape the edge, you scrape the nozzle against the edge of the thing as you're removing it, but I don't know. I just haven't gotten it right ever. All right, so this one has all its magnets in. Now the next step in this process is putting the base coat on, and a lot of this stuff, I'm going to tell you, I learned it from Black Magic Craft. If you guys are familiar with him, Jeremy's pretty awesome with this kind of stuff, and he's been doing it for like a decade now. I'm done with the glue gun, so I'm going to unplug it. But, I picked up a few things and came up with a few ideas of my own as I went along doing this stuff, but I initially learned how to do it from him, and he's pretty freaking awesome. So once I get the base coat on, this is what they're going to look like. They're black, okay. You can see I didn't put base coat on the bottom, but like this one, I base coated the bottom, and I did the same with this one. So typically that's what I do, but you absolutely don't have to do it, because when you put it down on the table, you can't see the bottom of it. It doesn't matter. But you do want to paint the sides, because when you put them together, you can, you'll be able to see the sides here, right? Okay. So we're going to put base coat on, turn this guy into one of these, okay? And so here's the secret. That's upside down because the camera's facing the wrong way. So this is not Mod Podge. You can buy black Mod Podge, but this is a combination of cheap craft paint and black Mod Podge. I just mix, or black Mod Podge and cheap black craft paint. You don't need expensive miniature paints to paint dungeon tiles. You don't. Craft paint's just fine. Don't use your miniature paints to paint stuff like this, because you'll spend a lot of money on paint. So I take Mod Podge and I mix black craft paint in it until it is until the Mod Podge turns black. That's basically it. And the reason that we do this is it creates, Mod Podge is partly glue, like just white glue, PVA glue, but it's also got kind of a lacquer or something like that in it, so it kind of creates this hard shell on the outside. And this foam, I mean, the foam itself really has a hard shell. Look at that magnet popped out. Partly, it's okay, it'll still work. So it creates kind of a hard shell, and the foam is already kind of hard, but this just gives it a little more of a protective layer on top. So this is already mixed up. And I've got just a big flat brush here. And I'm just gonna like really brush this on as heavily as I can. I'm gonna get a paper towel here, which I've already got some paint on. Now, I don't know how you're gonna do this, but I don't think I've ever figured out how to not get paint on myself doing this. But it's okay. It washes off, man. It's acrylic and stuff. It washes right off. So I load this brush up because this stuff, it takes a lot of it, and just cover the whole top of it. And I kind of leave one corner for last, so I have a way to hang on to it. And generally I will do the top first, and you got to make sure you get down in all the cracks and the crevices, because that's going to be part of the look of the dungeon tile. You don't want to leave any pink spots, right? Or, green if you're using that. Okay. Blue, whatever, depends on where you are and what you can get. All right, so once again, I'm going to load the brush up pretty heavily. I'm going to move that up a little bit, because this gets a little tricky. Where the magnets are, the paint doesn't want to stick to the magnets. So if you just brush it on, it's just going to kind of smear across the magnet, and you're still going to see silver. So you just want to load it up pretty good on the brush. I mean, you can see I've got a ton of it sitting on there, and then just kind of almost like you're just shoveling in there, filling the hole where the magnet is. And you'll be able to tell when it gets too thin and it's not filling up the hole. See, like that one. The stuff will contract as it dries, so it's not going to be all blobby like this once it dries. But just go ahead and fill up that hole, and make sure you don't brush directly over the magnet when you're sort of smoothing everything else out, which you do want to do. You do want to go through and smooth out all around it, but just make sure that you don't brush across the magnet, because then that kind of defeats the purpose of what we just did. And this is where I'm going to get paint all over myself. Okay, a little more. And this is harder to get off than paint because, yeah, it's got glue in it, but it still comes off pretty easy. And look at this, I can put my finger on it and look, it's still pretty good. So I'm going to set this right here on top of this paper towel, which means it's probably going to wind up stuck to it, but that's okay. We'll live with it. And I'm going to rinse that brush out a bit. I'm not going to get all that out because this stuff is just super thick, right? All right, and we will wash that out later. So not really anything to worry about right now. I'm going to close this bag up. So just remember that Mod Podge black craft paint, and I buy craft paint. I usually buy it at Michael's, but you can any craft paint. They're all the same, unless you spend extra money. Guys, I'm going to take a little quick break and come back, and I'll show you how to apply the color to these bad boys in just a moment. All right, I'm back. I'm going to go ahead and click back over to the tabletop. All right, so I've got one paper towel over here with the base coat drying on a tile. Now, one thing to remember, so typically when I'm doing those is I have this rack that I made that has pegs that I can set the tiles on top of as they're drying so that they don't stick to a surface. But, you know, frankly, if you're careful, you can usually, like I used to have a cutting mat that's covered in black paint because I used to just put them on a mat like this. But there are a couple of things you're going to need. Okay, you're going to need some parchment paper. I stole some of my wife's parchment paper from the kitchen because I had some, but I ran out. So, see, the Prez is asking about the material. So the material is, you can buy it at Home Depot. I would put a link to it, but you can get it on Amazon, but it's you're not going to get exactly what you need, and it's going to cost you way more than it needs to. But it's just it's insulation foam, and you can go to Home Depot or Lowe's. You can buy it on in the insulation aisle. There's big. I can't remember what size they are. Same size as a sheet of plywood. I can't 4x8, 4x8 foot. Um, and this particular foam that I'm using is the oh my gosh, Owens Corning, with the Pink Panther on it, right? And I use 1/2 inch, and it's really not expensive for like a big sheet, and you can just break it down and store it that way because you're going to chop it up into bits and pieces. It is so I don't have. It is not terribly porous. That's one of the nice things about it. I don't know. I've never tried to stick a suction cup to it. I think that as long as you don't texture it, if you that a suction cup would probably hold to it because it's pretty smooth. And the outside, like if once you cut into it, the inside is more porous, but the outside kind of has a surface that's less porous. So maybe, I don't know. I've never tried to do that. All right, so I got another paper towel because I know I'm going to make a mess. And that's just to kind of help keep my hands clean. And we're using parchment paper because essentially we're going to be doing some dry brushing now. And if you're not familiar with dry brushing, it's like the world's easiest, uh, painting technique to make stuff look kind of cool. And there are a lot of hardcore folks who are kind of against it, but I dig it. And a lot of people do it and they don't do it very well. But if you do it well, it's really cool. And guys, I just realized I don't have my palette for my paint, and I'm gonna need that. A lot of things I do, I don't need a palette for, but for this I do. So give me just a second. All right. And as you can see, this bad boy has gotten a lot of use. So I have way more stuff on this desk than I usually have when I'm doing this. So just trying to make some room here. I'm gonna move this paper towel with the drying tile on it. So anyway, see the Prez. I see what you're saying. It's probably worth a shot to put a suction cup on the back while you're painting the front. But again, I don't know, and I don't have one. If I had one handy, I'd check it out. So I'll show you how to do dry brushing. I'm kind of working on the assumption that you already know how to do it. So there may be, for doing this particular type of tile, this particular color scheme, there may be a better base to start with than black. I mean, you probably could do it with a white, like if you were really going for like a snowy, icy kind of thing. To be honest, my thought is more I want to do like icy stone, like there's stone under there, right? So it works with the dark with the black base. For the most part, you're not going to see the base through it, except for like where the grid lines are. So, all right. So the first color then, so we've got our black base, and we're going to do 3 coats of paint, okay? Successively, each coat is successively lighter. And the first one is going to be, this is called English Navy. It's from this paint actually came from, oh my god, I just told you guys I always buy my paints at my craft paints at Michael's, but none of these are from Michael's. English Navy. Okay, it's a navy blue. And then the second coat, and this one's going to be pretty thick. This is actually going to be like over brushing, which is basically just a little bit heavier dry brush. Okay, and then this one is Ocean Cruise, and this one's from, so this is Walmart. This is Hobby Lobby, I believe. And the stuff I usually buy, no, that's not it either. That's also from Hobby Lobby. This is the stuff I usually get at Craft Smart. It's the Michael's store brand. Basically, it's pretty dang cheap. So, not as cheap as Apple Barn. Apple Barn's like the cheapest one because it's at Walmart. But I mean, in all honesty, guys, I mean, I sure can't tell the difference in any of these. So, all right. So, I'm gonna move my palette over a little bit, kind of off camera, and I was gonna shake up the paint, make a real gross noise. I'm gonna put, and you know, I'm gonna need a fair amount of this, so I'll fill up a cup in my palette with it, and I've got a pretty heavy brush, a pretty big brush here, because I just want to cover as much ground as possible at any given time. All right. Load up your brush. This is how we do overbrushing and dry brushing. So here's what the parchment's for. You're going to brush off most of this on there. Now, this is overbrushing. You don't want to take off too much. You want to basically get the bulk of it off, but you don't want to get everything off. But in the successive coats with the different colors, we're going to get lighter and lighter with the amount of paint on the brush. And then you just, as lightly as you can, just kind of go across it. And it's very hard to tell in this light, kind of the difference. And the thing is here, I can just brush back through this because I've got some excess there. And I do want to get this on pretty heavy, right? And you can see how it's sort of accenting the high spots and leaving the low spots black, right? Tell you what I'm going to do. I've got another light here. I'm going to real quickly and yeah, you know, Prez, I might have to I might have to try your idea. But hey, you know, honestly, the craft paint, you're putting it on so thin, it dries so quickly. Okay. Hopefully that's not too bright for you guys, but I can see better now, and I can see the color better. Okay, and it's a dark color, right? And you want it to be, because we're going from darker to lighter. And this, yeah, I'm getting it on my fingers, and I'm getting my fingers in the paint, but it dries so quickly that it's not really hurting anything. Okay, and I got all my edges here, and really you're wanting to hit the high points, but with this first coat you can see I'm still laying it on pretty thick. Like, it is going down in some of those crevices and things. You just don't want it to go down. I try to keep it from getting into the grid lines. And then we're going to do this with every single one of these guys. Okay. And this really isn't going to take long. The painting's the easiest part. And it's the part, of course, that makes the most difference. It's just like painting your house. Like painting your living room is one of the easiest things you could do to make it completely different. Easiest and least expensive, right? And it's the same with your dungeon tiles. It's the easiest part, the part that makes it the coolest. So, and the idea generally with dry brushing is that it's a way to highlight, right? You're trying to hit the high points and make make those stand out from the lower recesses that are going to be a darker color. So it's kind of the illusion of lighting, and there are other ways to do things like that too. I am not like, I've gotten pretty decent at this, but I'm not like the best painter. And I said this a couple of weeks ago when I was painting the base for that Displacer Beast miniature. I've gotten pretty good at what I can do, and I enjoy it, and it looks good on my table, right? And that's the important thing, man. Like, don't worry about perfection, because you'll never get it. And you're never gonna, I mean, maybe you are. Maybe you're an artist. Maybe you're an artist, and you'll be like that, like Lila Mev or Sigmar. Those guys that are painting all that stuff all the time, and they're freaking artists. And yeah, I mean, maybe you are one of those people, and if you are, that's awesome. But you don't have to be one of those people to enjoy painting miniatures, okay, and painting terrain. You don't have to be Jeremy from Black Magic Craft to enjoy making your own tabletop terrain. You don't even have to be me, and I'm honestly not special. So, but I do enjoy it. I think I said this before, but I've always kind of been fascinated by miniature things, and so but I never thought I would have, as a kid and a young adult even, I never thought I'd have the patience to do this kind of stuff. But then I was like, you know what? I'm going to make myself have the patience to do it. And here we are. Painting something you've already accepted this is going to happen. What do you mean making a mess? Is that what you're talking about? Sorry, my Twitch chat is off to the side. I can't see it all the time. I don't know how long that message has been there, but yes, I have. Yeah, I mean, that's basically true. I've accepted that. It's going to be a mess, and that's fine. That's part of the fun, right? It's like eating barbecue, man. Part of the joy is making a mess. Don't wear a white shirt. What's your favorite barbecue? Like, where you guys, kind of barbecue you guys like? I mean, I'm in Texas, so I'm a big fan of the Texas barbecue. Paint on the hands, yes. Yeah, that's what yeah, exactly. Paint on the hands. Yeah, even if you're careful, man, paint minis, because I use a painting handle typically. Now, you guys watch me paint the Displacer Beast without a handle, really. I missed a couple of spots with the black here, but it's okay. I can fill it with this and it'll be all right. And I didn't use a handle for that because well, no, you didn't. If you've seen the original when I painted the Displacer Beast, not the base, yeah, I didn't use a handle because I was painting it for someone who didn't want the the guy I was painting it for didn't want the base, and so I was painting it without a handle because you can't, you got to have the base to use the handle. So Oh, that yellow mustard barbecue. So, are you in, what is it, in the Carolinas or somewhere? Yeah, that's where my wife's family from that part of the world. Yeah, and it's like the right, in the right context is good. I mean, the difference is like in Texas we don't really do sauce. I mean, there is barbecue sauce, and I like barbecue sauce, but only Texas barbecue sauce. Um, but it's typically Texas barbecues, of course. Uh, yeah, South Carolina. There you go. Yeah, my wife's family's from South Carolina, and typically Texas barbecues beef or a brisket. You have some other stuff, and we do pork and all that, but the Carolina barbecue is usually a pork with that mustard based sauce, and it's good. I like it, but it's hard to beat a good smoked brisket. Um, I wish I could remember the name of that. There was a place that in South Carolina that I went with my wife's family, and I can't think of the name of it. All right, so we finished with that color. So you can see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. So my eighth one, the eighth one's not going to dry in time. The base isn't going to dry in time for us to paint it tonight. But we got the base coat done on all these, and you can see like this is the first one I did. It's completely dry. So it takes no time at all. And the further you go with this, the quicker it's going to dry. You know what? Hang on. I'm going to ask my wife for the barbecue place. Parker's Barbecue in North Carolina. So it was North Carolina. Oh man, you listen, bro. You can't go. I'm telling you, you can't go wrong with a good smoked brisket. Um, and I'm here in DFW, and there's a lot of good barbecue places up here. But I really like. There's a place called Hutchins in the McKinney. They have a location in Frisco too, but the McKinney one's the original one. And I love Hutchins barbecue. And part of the reason I love it is because you don't have to stand in line. There's so many barbecue places in Texas that you have to stand in line at, and then they run out. You're standing there for 4 hours, and they run out of brisket, and you're like, "Come on, man!" But you don't have to. It's not like that at Hutchins. It's a big place. They cook tons of stuff, and it's really good, really really good. There's also some really famous Pecan Lodge here in Dallas. Lots of places like that. Lots of good stuff in Houston too. Is where we have family in Houston, and I lived there for a long time. Anyway, so all right, it's time to move on to our, what was it called? Ocean cruise, full cart ocean cruise. And this is going to be the next color, and you just want to make sure that you start with the ones you painted first, with the first coat, because they'll be dry. Because the first coat's going to take a little more time to dry because it's thicker, a thicker coat. Oh, look at that, man! I didn't even get to painting with it. Yeah, so we went to Parker's Barbecue a couple of times, I think, with my wife's family, traveling, because her dad's family is from North Carolina or South Carolina. He would be really upset if he heard me say that. Um, I think her mom's family is from North Carolina. They lived in South Carolina, and so we'd travel all over the place over there. Um, yeah, went to Parker's Barbecue, and it was good. It was good. If my choice would always be Texas barbecue, Texas brisket, smoked brisket. But you know, so this one, yeah, we're going to do the same thing. You're going to load up your brush and, you know, get a bunch of it off. Okay, now you can see it's starting to get real thin, starting to get a lot thinner. Okay, and now when you do this, you want to brush very, very lightly so that you don't cover too much. So because you want kind of that dark blue and the black to show through a bit, but you see how it's mainly hitting the high points, and we want it to be a little thicker than that, but don't put more pressure on it necessarily. Just keep going over it, right? And that's what we want to do. The reason that you can use a paper towel or something to do your dry brushing to unload your brush on, but parchment is better because it actually kind of leaves moisture in the brush, so that it just the painting happens with a little more smoothness, right? I'm not sure I could have found a more awkward way to say that, but oh my gosh, right in the paint. That happens a lot actually, because I'm trying not to, you know, squeeze it, right? Okay, so you know, this one again, still fairly thick. Okay, you see, and you can see this is where we're at. There's one more step after this. I want to get this on, you know, fairly thick. Okay. I might need to double check myself here, guys. You know, I just had this moment where I thought maybe I didn't, maybe there was another color in there. And if there was, like, I have it. But so honestly, it's been, this is really only the second time I've done this. I've been working on a video where I was kind of experimenting with some different colors to get specific, like a sandstone and this ice. But and I had to, it's been a while since I did it, and I've had to go back through the video footage that I shot. Oh man, how many tiles do I typically batch for drying times? So here's the thing, like when you're doing this, it takes no time at all for it to dry. I mean, by the time I get done with all of these, the other ones will definitely be dry, and I can go on to the next one, the next color. You know, it just kind of depends on what I'm doing. Like to me, like a set is 16 tiles. That seems to be a good number. So, you know, typically I'll do at least that many at a time at a given time. But I have done hundreds of them at any given time, because like I said, I used to sell them. And I still do actually. If you go look for Short Rest Studios on Etsy, I have some stuff still for sale out there. I think I got a few sets of some terrain stuff. I'm honestly trying to clear that out, you know, because I'm trying to get out of that business. But I started selling stuff on Etsy to pay for my D&D habit, and then once I started the YouTube channel, I thought, hey, why don't I go sell stuff at a convention? So I went to this little bitty convention, and I sold absolutely nothing. Well, I sold like 2 things, But then I just kept doing it because I was like, well, maybe I can, use this as a way to kind of raise some money to pay for stuff for the YouTube channel, right? And eventually, last year I went to BGG. I sold at BGG Con, and didn't do very well. After having done very well at BGG Spring, but honestly, that BGG Spring Convention was the only one that I sold a lot at, and I finally was like, this is getting ridiculous. I keep doing this. I'm spending tons of money on these conventions because it's a heck of a lot more expensive to be a vendor at a convention than it is to just go to one. And I'm not selling anything. Like, I was 3D printing stuff. I was making handmade terrain, and 3D printing miniatures and dice towers and all kinds of stuff like that. And yeah, I finally just decided I've been doing this to make money for the YouTube channel, but it's become this monstrous thing. I just can't keep up with it anymore. I think I've got enough of this paint in my palette to finish these up. But that said, I was, you guys know I was hoping to go to Gen Con this year. I was planning on it. I have my badge. I was blessed enough to get a press badge, so I wasn't going to have to pay for the convention, but just getting there, once I lost my job, it kind of became a no-go. So, but I had been planning on running some games. I was working with Chaosium and Goodman Games to run some Call of Cthulhu and Dungeon Crawl Classics while I was there, and I had to back out all that stuff. It really stinks. All right, last one. Once again, you just, and you can see like where there's a crack that I made right there. I'm trying to look at it on the screen and point at it at the same time. And so if you were doing my standard gray ones, gray dungeon tiles, you would start with your black base, then you do a dark gray, and then a lighter gray, and then a white for highlights. But I usually use for that, I use a color called vanilla, which is, it's an off-white rather than just a straight up white. For these, I'm going to use white, like straight up bright white. And in actuality, I'm using, I just told you guys earlier not to use your mini paints for this stuff, but I'm using mini paint because it doesn't take a lot and I'm not painting a ton of them. And I don't have craft paint in a bright white, so I shouldn't have put those right next to my water cup. Probably need another paper towel too, because this is still wet. And another beautiful thing about this is, like, I'm going right from one color to the next. I'm not changing brushes or anything. It's okay, because these are all colors that you kind of want them to meld a bit, right? I mean, you don't want to mix them, but you do want them to meld a bit. Now, here's something I'm going to do. I'm going to double check myself, because I'm looking at this and I'm wondering if I didn't have another color that I forgot about in this setup. So I'm gonna have to kind of go look at some of my footage here, but it's okay because I know what I'm looking for. But they're looking good so far. I know it's kind of weird seeing blue dungeon tiles, but yeah, so typically when I do these guys, the gray ones, it's a dark gray, then gray, and then, of course, the base is still black. Dark gray, gray, and then a off-white. And then I use black wash, which I make my own black wash. And I wish I could tell you exactly how to make it, but I just kind of do it till it looks right. But I use basically purified water and black acrylic ink and a little bit of this is, what is this, burnt umber? Yeah, burnt umber acrylic ink, just to give it a little bit more of an organic feel, right? And so I do that, and then I put a, oh goodness, something's leaking in this container. Um, so this is a Flow Aid. So there's a little bit of matte medium in there, and which is basically, if you've never used that, it's basically paint without pigment. Um, and so you can mix different color. You can mix inks, and the great thing about inks is that they're very, very pigment heavy. Hey man, I paint at my desk all the time, so. Oh yeah, it's all good. I mean, listen, selling at cons was a lot of fun, but it was hard to, it's hard to make money, and especially like I was doing 3D printing stuff, and I had never really intended on that as a business. You know, it just kind of happened. But then also, people are, everybody and their dog is 3D printing. You know, and so it's kind of getting more and more difficult to have a business doing it. And I didn't want to just sell, you know, little flexi dragons and that kind of stuff, which those are cool, those are fine. But I was in it. I wanted to do gaming stuff, right? And it was just, I was having a tough time with it, and I maybe could have done a little better at it, but you know, I would have taken a lot more time and effort and money, and I just decided I wanted to focus on content creation. So I need to go here. All right, let's see. I think that that is it. That's the only other color. Yeah, I'm just looking through some footage right now. Yeah, the white's all that's left. And that bright white makes a big difference. Okay. So, but okay, for these guys, we are not going to use black wash. We don't want black wash because we want them to have that, you know, brightness, whiteness. And like I said, and I'll grab the can so I can show it to you. I'm not going to spray these with the finish yet. I can't do that on camera. Can't spray that in my office here. Um, and in case you're wondering, the keyboard is not staying on the desk. Oh goodness. Flow Aid dripped out of that container. Okay. All right. And this is the other nice thing about the parchment. I can just fold it over and do some more on the other side. Okay. Now, just get some bright white craft paint if you're going to do a bunch of these. The thing is, I'm using this partly because I have about 1 million bottles of this stuff. So, and this is just Vallejo model color white. So, but don't use this unless you have, are like me and have 5 million bottles of it laying around. And the thing is, the reason I say don't use that stuff is because it's much more expensive than craft paint. I mean, you know, miniature paint's pricey, and it's pricey for a reason. The pigment particles are smaller, so it deals better with the small, tiny details on miniatures. They're more pigment heavy. It's just better quality paint. Okay, but don't use those on your crafts because you need a ton of it and it doesn't need it. So I think I did I answer the question earlier about the material? It's, yeah, Owens Corning insulation sheets. You can get them at any big box hardware store. Home Depot sells Owens Corning, which is the pink stuff, which is what I'm using. Lowe's carries a different brand that's blue. There is a company, there's a denser foam in Europe that's green, and there's also a black foam that a lot of people in the UK use. I don't know about those. The denser foam that's green, like, it is great. Like, I would love to get some of it, but it's more expensive. You can't get it in the US. But and I will tell you, I've tried to use this stuff at Lowe's, and I didn't like it as much. But you know, it still works. So you just do want to make sure, like, you can cut the stuff with a knife, with a box knife, like a good, I don't know if you saw in the footage earlier, I had a, oh gosh, I've totally forgotten the name, the brand name. Starts with an O. It's a really great knife. It's what most people use for cutting this kind of stuff. However, a hot wire cutter of some kind is always the best way to go with foam. All right, so white. And this time we're going to leave hardly any on the brush. Okay, you can see I got that pretty thin. And now the goal with this, like, we do want to cover the surface with a lot of white because we want it to look like ice. Really, up until this point, everything is there to just kind of create that undercurrent of blue, right? But with this, and this is how I would do the gray ones. Like, at this point, I would mainly focus on the corners. And you saw this one is one that I didn't do a lot of distressing to. It just has some texture. I focus on the corners, okay, and those corners too, not just the top corners. And I do that because I want to make sure that those get hit good, and then very, very lightly with very little paint on the brush. And a lot of people don't like a lot of people don't like streaks, but it doesn't bother me. I mean, it just kind of, I don't know. You're going to get some, most likely. And see, I might need to put a little more white on there. And also this one, which this is the finished one in this hand. It's got that gloss finish on it, which makes a big difference. And I did that because I want it to look like there's ice on it, right? I'm going to hit this with a little bit more. So basically this is, we want it to be white with that undercurrent of blue. And we want and the way you do that is by hitting those high points with the white. There it is. That's it. Okay. And then we're just going to do that to the rest of them. And I do like to hit those first just so I can make sure that I get them. Those corners. And I like to do it this way at an angle because I feel like that kind of hits the high points and accentuates the edges, like the edges of the grid lines and stuff, without creating too much, without covering too much, right? Those look pretty good. And this really, I mean, this part doesn't take long. You just got to make sure you get most of the paint off your brush. And I always use a big fat brush. I used to use a smaller one because I was concerned about accuracy, but then one day, like, I literally, the first show that I did, we had some friends help me, and I just decided, geez, I'm going to try a bigger brush. And it took me 3 seconds to dry brush one of these guys. And I was like, crap, I've been using a little brush all this time. It's like if you're dry brushing a miniature, you got to be very, very careful because you don't want to get, you got to use a smaller brush because you don't want to get your paint in the wrong place once you're dry brushing. Because when you're dry brushing, by the time you're dry brushing, you've already done everything else, right? Because you're highlighting. I kind of did that a little quicker than I meant to, but it's okay. And you can see how, look at that, where the crack is there. Yeah, that's sweet. Sweet, sweet, sweet detail. Oh, I keep hitting the microphone with the paintbrush. I think this batch is coming out pretty good, guys. What do you guys think? Hey, man, take care. See, the Briz is out. One of our channel members. Appreciate all you folks hanging out with me. And I do want to say, hey, don't forget, check out the Patreon, patreon.com/shortreststudios. Your support, listen, every bit of support, including watching this stream, is incredibly appreciated. Like I really do appreciate you guys. Couldn't do this. Hey, couldn't do this without you guys out there, right? And look at this. Isn't this amazing how much, like okay guys, I was worried about it because it's been a while since I did this particular type of tile. And looking at this, I was like, how is that one more coat going to make it look like that? And hey, it did. Okay. Oh, I just broke my rule. I didn't do the corners. And you'll see I got down in one of the grid lines there. I mean, guys, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You make these, and if your players, if your folks at your table have never, especially if they've never seen them before, never had terrain, throw some of these on your table, man, they will love it. Okay, I'm telling you, they will think it's awesome. Last one. This is gonna be a fun one. So you can see there's a little bit of detail, so you just want to make sure that you kind of get around the edges of that detail. It looks like I got some water on that or something. Crap. I'm gonna have to see if I can't wipe that off. I think that might actually be that flow aid, man. I picked it up to show it to you guys. I didn't realize it was it had leaked. All right, so, and this you want to make sure you get, like I've got those cuts. You want to make sure that you get both edges of those to highlight, right? And like these are fun, man. And this would be great, like if you're running, what's that? The Essentials Kit, the D&D Essentials Kit Adventure, Dragon of Icespire Peak. Dragon of Icespire Peak. You're up in those frozen mountains. These would be great for that. That's it, man. It's only 8:30, but I absolutely would not have been able to do the entire process. Give me a couple seconds. I'm gonna go grab, and you can see these are like the one I just did is a little bit tacky, but these are dry, man. You do have to seal them though, because they will, the paint will rub off, just like with minis, right? Okay, I'm gonna go grab that can of finish so I can show it to you guys. All right, this is the stuff right here. Krylon triple thick crystal clear glaze. And I put a couple of coats on here. I might actually do another one, but it's pretty shiny, and I don't even know if you guys can actually, I mean, you can see it, but I don't know if you can tell how shiny it is. And there's some other things that you can do to these too. Like, I don't know if you know this, but nail polish remover, because it's got acetone in it, will eat foam. And you can use that to make some really cool features in your tiles and that kind of thing. I thought about doing some of that with this, like putting some holes in with that stuff and maybe filling it with like hot glue or something that look kind of like ice, chunks of ice. Obviously I cannot spray this stuff in here, but to make these really get that icy look, it's gotta be a clear, glossy finish of some kind. And I actually love these. So the other one I use is Krylon Matte Finish, and that's what I use. That's what it's called, Matte Finish. And that's what I use for these guys, and what I used for the sandstone ones. And one of the things you should do if you put the magnets in them, you want to make sure that you test your magnets before you paint them, right? But you got to leave them a bit so that the glue has a chance to set. So the way I do that is I've got a set of them here, and I want to test all the magnets as I got one, and then I just put one next to it, and I make sure like this side attaches, this side bounces off, this side attaches, this side bounces off. Okay, that means that one's good. And then I do the same thing with the other ones, and I just do that until, and these should all be good because I didn't do that many. But when I do a big set, man, yeah, there are often when I've done big batches of them, I have had to pull magnets out of some of them and redo them. And then of course, oh wait, did that work right? Yeah, it did. Okay. All right. So then what I do is I use this one, and I want to test this one now because I didn't test it. So okay, those are all good to go. You don't want to stack them when they're like this, because they're already stick together. All right, guys, that's it. Anybody got any more questions? Hey, see the Prez, once again, thank you for being here. Lixie, thank you for hanging out. Man, that was fun, guys. That was a lot of fun. I'm gonna go ahead and call it for the evening because I'm done. I just got to go spray the finish on them, and I can't do that here. So appreciate y'all hanging out. Don't forget to check out the special episode I did on Monday, did yesterday, about Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford joining Critical Role. Big news in the TTRPG industry. So yeah, check that out. Turn this light off. And Friday is an episode. Is Daggerheart the D&D killer we've been waiting for? That's the episode that's coming out this Friday. And spoiler alert, the change in staff at Darrington Press didn't change my opinion. So, but Daggerheart is big news right now too. So video on that, and I've got some more. You're running different monsters wrong. Here's how to run them better. Videos coming. Some more comparisons. I'm going to be doing a comparison of the One Ring versus D&D, and some other games like that as well. So I'm going to look at. Oh gosh, I'm forgetting now what other games I'm going to look at. But Workborg, tons of them I want to look at. So please, if you're not on YouTube, if you're watching on Twitch, head over to YouTube, check out some of the episodes. Either way, thank you for being here. Don't forget to check out the Patreon, patreon.com/shortreststudios. Become a member of the Adventurers Guild, and help us have fun and build this community. And I will see you guys next time on Short Rest Studios. Have a great night. If I can figure out which button to push. Good night, everybody.